Hey guys, this is the MMA Breakdown, back with my predictions for UFC on Fox 17, Dos Anjos versus Cerrone. Before I get into the predictions, I want to really quickly show you guys my updated ranking on UFC Fantasy. Haven't done this in a while. I think the last time I did it was maybe after the Tough Latin America 2 finale, or even before that, but something that I wanted to be consistent with in all of my videos, and not going to go through all of the events since then, but just the last one, 194, and show you where I am now in the rankings. So I was 9 for 12 for the event, for the picks, and I was 571 for the event, and that bumped me up into the top 500, sitting at 480 right now. I'm really happy about that. My goal is to finish in the top 500 for the year. I did that last year, actually finished in the top 250 last year. Didn't get that final ranking on video, but did get I do have the 500 top 500 trophy from last year, and I'll be sure to get my final ranking on video this year, but I feel pretty confident that I can do that because I feel like this Fox card is a pretty easy one to pick for the most part, and I wasn't sure that I would be able to finish in the top 500 because going into last weekend before the first of the three events, I was sitting at around 650. After the Namajunas Van Zandt card, even though I picked Namajunas, I fell to 670, I think, or maybe lower. But after the three events, I'm cracked into the top 500. I'm at 480 right now, so feeling good about that. And I'll just show you my picks real quickly for 194. I picked the main and co-main events, both the title fights, correctly. Really happy and proud about that. I have no problem saying that. I mean, that's what I'm on here to do, and I think my ranking speaks for itself. Both last year and this year, over time, I've proven that I'm competent at predicting fights, and I guess it just comes with the territory. But it's very evident to me after this fight that you're never gonna get as much hate and criticism as you do when you're right about your predictions. I said Rockhold would out grapple Weidman. I even got the the fourth round finish correct. I thought he would submit him, but got the fourth round finish. I said McGregor would finish Aldo. Definitely didn't see it going down the way it did in the first round, but still picked him to finish. And not only do you just have your regular scumbags coming on here just being disrespectful and mean just for the sake of being mean, and some people are just very hateful for no reason at all, and they don't even say anything about the picks, just come on the video to disrespect you, and that's fine, whatever. I think those are horrible people, just the scum of the earth. But then I also have these stupid idiots still criticizing my picks. I had this one motherfucker who I replied to someone else's comment after the fights who had said that you can't compare Rockhold's and Weidman's performances against Machida. You can't compare those two because Machida wasn't the same guy when Rockhold fight him. And I went back after the fight, replied to this guy, and I said, I guess I was right about that because I used that fight as the basis for my prediction that Rockhold would out-grapple Weidman. And then this other guy comes on there and he says, what were you right about exactly? I mean, are you kidding me? How stupid do you have to be? You're just dealing with the real scum of the earth sometimes on the internet. And, I guess it just comes with the territory of being successful. So, I don't get it, but I guess I just wanted to share that with you guys. But I picked McGregor. I thought he would finish. I thought the fight would go deep. So I got the knockout right, but I thought it would happen in the fourth round. Rockhold got the fourth round finish. I thought he would sub, though. I thought Souza won his fight, but got that wrong, obviously. He was completely wrong about the Maia fight. Holloway decision. I thought Faber lost the fight, actually, but I thought he would sub, so I picked that correctly. Torres by decision. I got Alves by sub. Again, completely wrong about the Santos-Lee fight. That was ridiculous. I never saw that coming. A great performance by Santos. And I picked Mustafayev. Medeiros, I picked him to win I picked him to finish in the third round. I guess I got points for calling the third round. I know most people probably thought McDessie won, but got Medeiros there, and McGee by decision picked that one. All right, guys. So now on to the predictions. Okay, so UFC on Fox 17, Dos Anjos versus Cerrone 2. I think it's a strong card overall, especially the main card. The Fox main cards are always great. And the prelim card is pretty good, not great, but you got some pretty good fights on there, especially the leading prelim. But let's get started. So starting off with the UFC Fight Pass prelim card at heavyweight, Luis Enrique versus debutant Francis Ngannou. Don't know that guy. Luis Enrique, or actually both of these guys are debuting. So don't know who these guys are, and we're going to have to skip over that one. All right. On to the next one at welterweight, Hader Hassan versus Vicente Luque. Really not interested in seeing this matchup for a second time. I thought it was absurd that they were going to make this the finale fight from the tough finale when it was the last fight on the actual show on television, and they were just going to run it back for a second time for the actual finale. I thought that was crazy. Excuse me, but I don't see any reason to pick Luque this time. I thought he would win on the show, but Hassan just proved to have the higher output. Luque can't trade in the pocket. I thought he would make better use of his grappling, but couldn't get Hassan down at all, and just had nothing to offer him on the feet. So even though Hassan went down pretty badly last time to Usman, I see no reason to pick Luque here. I think Hassan gets another decision. All right, next up at welterweight, Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman. Leon Edwards, I think he's a decent prospect. He's a long, fluid striker. Thought his striking looked good even in his loss to Claudio Enrique da Silva, and looked great, obviously, in the Baczynski fight, knocking him out in seconds. But his last fight against Pavel Pavlik showed that he's not quite at the level where he can consistently put guys away, who he has a big skill advantage over. Did drop him late in that fight with a head kick, but I thought should have been able to put him away easier and earlier than that. And based on the last performance, I got to go with Usman, who I had pretty much no interest in watching him on Tough. Barely got by Michael Graves in the first fight of the season. Just a very uneventful fight. Looked very hesitant and timid. Didn't want to let his hands go. Wasn't really dominant with his wrestling either. And I don't even remember who he fought in his second fight. I don't even care to look it up. But then against Hassan in the finale, looked really, really good. Was big, athletic, and strong. Got the takedown easily. And didn't even look lost on the feet. His striking looked pretty solid, and on the ground he was able to beat up Hassan there and finish him off with the head and arm choke. So I'm high on Usman. If he can keep improving and keep showing that athleticism, that wrestling, and submission offense, I think he's a really bright prospect. So you got to go with the wrestler here against Edwards. Edwards lost to Enrique da Silva because he was taken down and held down. If he can do that, I think Usman surely can with his wrestling ability. So you got to go with Usman here. I might take him by submission. I don't know, but at least a decision. All right, on to the FS1 prelim card at featherweight, Cole Miller versus Jim Alers. I think this could be a fun fight. There could be some action here. Jim Miller's doesn't strike me as a really high-level prospect. Looked decent against Alan O'Mare in his debut. Got some takedowns on the feet. Was kind of even. And then his last fight with Chaz Skelly was actually, I thought, dominating Skelly on the feet pretty much. Was tagging him a bunch. But was at the end of the second round, I think. He got caught. He ate that controversial knee. It might have been illegal, but got put out. But Cole Miller, I think he's the safe pick here. I mean, obviously, he has the submission ability. But the thing with Cole Miller, sometimes his stand-up looks good and sometimes it's just absolutely horrible. I mean, this guy got outboxed by Nam Phan, by Steven Seiler, and even on the ground sometimes he just looks like he's not there, like against Andy Ogle. Andy Ogle was just, laying in his guard, and, Cole Miller had like a half-completed armbar attempt, and he just let Ogle hang out there. And also against Manny Gamburian, got taken down, didn't do much off of his back. So I think Cole Miller's been really inconsistent since he's gone to featherweight. But then, sometimes like against Sam Sicilia, he just looks incredible. Had great combinations in that fight, showed a great jab, picked him apart, dropped him, and finished him off with a submission. So Cole Miller has the veteran experience, should have the skill advantage, but that inconsistency is something to watch out for. So I'm going to take Miller. I just think he's the safer pick here, but I won't write off Alers. All right, next up, a lightweight, Nick Lentz versus Danny Castillo. This is the most interesting fight on the prelim card, and I think the toughest one to call as well. Danny Castillo, if this was Danny Castillo from 2-3 years ago, easily would take him to beat Nick Lentz, but he's definitely been on the decline. Obviously, you could see that in his knockout loss to Paul Felder, and then in his last fight against Jim Miller, maybe that was just him at a skill disadvantage, but I still think he's just falling off the cliff athletically. He is getting up there in age. I think he's over 35. Yeah, he's 36. And even in the Tony Ferguson fight, I thought he looked dramatically slowed down from a couple of fights before that. And also the Tim Means fight, which was before the Ferguson fight. I thought that's when he first showed signs of starting to really slow down. But I still think he's adding to his striking. I thought he was winning the Ferguson fight on the feet. But anyways, Nick Lentz, this is a guy who is still improving and adding to his game. I think his last fight against Charles Oliveira, we saw probably the best Nick Lentz that we've ever seen. And he was extremely high output in that fight. He was all tenacity, all forward pressure, and just let his hands go, which is very different than what we've seen from him previously, like in the Gamburian fight. Didn't let his hands go much. A lot of that fight was up against the fence in the clinch, and even got tagged by Gamburian late. So Lentz is a guy who has been inconsistent, but he's younger. I think he'll be more athletic here. If this is the old Castillo who's able to get takedowns easily and just dominate with relentless ground and pound from top control, then I'd like him to win. But I think with his decline, with Nick Lentz still getting better, yet to reach his peak, I think Lentz is going to take this one. So I'm going to take Lentz here. All right, next up a middleweight, Josh Saman versus Tamden McCrory. McCrory, I know he was in the UFC before. This is his second stint, but I don't believe I've ever seen the guy fight. Last fight was at UFC 101 against John Howard, and I was probably on the prelim card, so I don't believe I saw that fight. So I'm not going to make a pick for this one, but Josh Saman, lost to Kelvin Gastelum on tough, and then his first fight in the UFC against Eddie Gordon. I actually thought he was losing that fight, wasn't looking too good, was having his takedown stuffed and reversed mid-takedown, getting put on his back off of his own takedown attempt. Thought he was getting outstruck on the feet, but landed that head kick knockout, and which was good. And then in his last fight against Cal Magalhães, that was a really impressive, super dominant performance. Was beating him up on the feet, took his back standing, and just choked him out viciously, and had him really bloodied up too. So I was really impressed by that, and I think it's safe to pick Saman here. But again, I don't know anything about McCrory or his game, so I'll refrain from making a pick here. But I really liked what we saw from Sam in his last fight against Magalhães. All right, next up, women's bantamweight Sarah Kaufman versus Valentina Shevchenko. Another fight that I'm not going to be able to make a prediction for. I don't know Shevchenko. Sarah Kaufman hasn't been too active in the UFC since coming over from Strikeforce. I thought she won her fight against Jessica Ai. Seems like a good boxer, able to, box at range fairly well. But after her loss to Alexis Davis in her last fight, it's pretty clear to me that she doesn't have much more than that boxing attack. She was dominating Davis on the feet, and it ended up on the ground. I think she might have dropped her even, but when she followed up with the ground and pound, got armbarred and submitted pretty instantly once it hit the ground. So I don't think that was a good sign. I think she's pretty one-dimensional. She is a good striker, but I don't know anything about Shevchenko, so I can't make a pick there. All right, next up at middleweight, CB Dollaway versus Nate Marquardt. Just absolutely atrocious that Nate Marquardt is still fighting. This guy should not be allowed to compete. The commission should not sanction him to fight, or it's crazy to me, Dana White, he does not give a crap about the health of, the non-superstars. When you think back to Chuck Liddell, when he got knocked out by Rich Franklin, Dana White saying, he could still make a ton of money off of Liddell, but he didn't want to make $1 of that kind of money and really cared about him, had to talk him into retiring. Where is that with guys like Nate Marquardt, with Gray Maynard, who's dropping to featherweight and still fighting? That to me is just disgusting. Nate Marquardt is completely gone. Absolutely 100%. He has no chin. That performance against Kelvin Gastelum was very ugly. This fight I would have been okay with if it happened 2 years ago after Marquardt beat James Tahuna and Dollaway was coming off of his win over Francis Carmont. And I think those fights happened within about a week of each other. I would have been fine with that then. But even if you go back before that fight against Tahuna, Marquardt suffered some vicious knockouts to Jake Ellenberger and Hector Lombard, where he just looked like he was standing right in front of the guys, waiting for them to knock him out. Just ugly. So definitely going with Dollaway here. It's got to be a first-round knockout. Dollaway, while I don't think he can ever be an elite fighter in this division, has really put his game together well. Has a ton of power in his hands. Not a technical striker, but just puts a lot of power into those haymakers. Put out Cesar Ferreira with one shot. Dropped Francis Carmont, and he's mixing in his wrestling there pretty well too, and dropped Bisping a few times as well. Did get finished by Machida very dominantly, but whatever. He never had a chance to win that fight. So you got to go with Dollaway here. Marquardt's just got no chin. He's just going to keep getting knocked out from here on out if he continues to fight. He absolutely needs to retire, and Dollaway still has big power, so he's going to put Marquardt out in the first round, definitely. All right, leading the last prelim on the Fox Sports 1 card, featherweight Charles Oliveira versus Miles Jury. Miles Jury making his debut at 145. Who knows how he's going to look? I mean, I don't know. I don't think he was a huge, I don't think he was that small of a lightweight. He was a good size for the division, I think. So as far as the weight class drop goes, I don't really have any thoughts about how that's going to affect him here. But I think it's a horrible idea to take on Oliveira in his first fight. Miles Jury is a good fighter. He has skills, even though he wins some really GSP-like decisions at times, like against Diego Sanchez, where he just doesn't do a whole lot except land a jab here and there and totally shut the other guy down, and he doesn't go for anything more than that. He's proved that he can be a dangerous fighter, like against Takanori Gomi. He can have some power, and he is a good grappler. I always think back to his fight against Michael Johnson, where he totally shut down Johnson, was able to take him down with ease and hold him there on the ground for the entire fight. Has a different kind of wrestling game, not a traditional blast double or single leg guy, but more leg tricks, more leg trips, more getting the body lock and working from there. So he's a good grappler, but you don't want to grapple with Oliveira. Probably one of the best submission guys in the UFC and all of the UFC right now. And on the feet, he's no slouch either. Against Jeremy Stephens, really proved that he can use his hands to close the distance and then work the takedown. And you just see how easily this guy threatens you on the ground. Every time that he got within arm's reach of Jeremy Stephens in that fight, within a few seconds, Stephens was on his back and fighting to stave off a fight-ending submission. So Oliveira is super dangerous. He's been getting better too. His striking is still not great, but I don't know that jury striking is much better. Oliveira, you have to remember this is a guy who was competitive with Edgar for 3 rounds and stood in front of him, got his shots in. So I like Oliveira to win this fight. I think I'm going to pick him by submission because I just don't see jury standing with this guy for three rounds. I think he's going to try to take it to the ground. Jury took down Cerrone in the opening of their fight. So once it hits the ground, Oliveira is just nasty with those submissions. So I'm going to take Oliveira by submission here. All right, on to the main card. At women's strawweight, Randa Marcos versus, I can't pronounce this girl's last name, Carolina. And we'll just leave it at that. We'll call her Carolina. She's debuting, so I don't know her. And again, I can't make a pick here. Randa Marcos, I think I was more impressed with her on Tough than I am with her performances in the UFC. She's a wrestler. She's physical, has good top position, but showed against Jessica Penne she doesn't have the grappling skills. She doesn't have the technique on the ground to hang with a better grappler, even though she was the better wrestler than Penne. Just got out grappled, got put in a mount on the ground, and kind of the same thing against Aisling Daly. Just seemed like she wanted to power her way on the ground, muscle her way into a dominant position, and dropped the first round against Daly. Came back. I thought she won the fight, but just struggles on the ground. She just doesn't have the technique there. It's all brute force. So I hear that Carolina's a strong prospect, a good athlete. I wouldn't take Marcos here solely based on her UFC experience. I just haven't seen the improvement since Tough. So I still think she has some ability, but not super high on her. And other than that, I won't be able to make a pick there. All right, next up at lightweight, Michael Johnson versus Nate Diaz. Michael Johnson's going to win this fight, take it to the bank. He has had his struggles on the ground before. Reza Madadi and the Miles Jury fight that I just talked about. But I think that those are more head case fights for him. And since then he's completely turned it around. He's not a great power striker. Did knock out Gleison Tebow, but mostly he's a master at footwork and controlling distance and putting pressure on guys. Did that really well against Barboza. I thought he definitely got robbed against Beneil Dariush. I thought he would lose that fight, but I thought that was really impressive that given his past struggles on the ground, he was able to keep that fight on the feet the whole time. I don't think it touched the ground once, and completely controlled the striking game. So Michael Johnson, I think, is just gonna walk down Nate Diaz here for 3 rounds. Nate, given his struggles on the ground, like I was saying, I think Nate Diaz stands a chance of catching him transition, catching him in a scramble with a submission. But Nate Diaz, he's been decoded. His game is outdated. So I just expect Michael Johnson to have the much higher level boxing technique in this fight. I think he's going to put that pressure on Diaz, just march him back and pick him apart, kind of like he did to Joe Lozon. Nate Diaz, his striking can be effective, but like I said, it's pretty much outdated. the code has been written on him. Josh Thompson figured him out. Ben Henderson put a massive beating on him. And in his last fight against Dos Santos, he just looked like he was over the hill. Claimed he was injured or sick or whatever, but he ate a ton of leg kicks, got put on his back, and really got beaten up. And I just think that's a sign that the Diaz brothers' style of fighting, it's really outdated. So Michael Johnson, I'm going to take him by decision. I think it's really foolish to take Diaz here. I think Johnson could get a takedown here or there. He's not great at transitioning. He really doesn't look to take it to the ground much anymore. As primarily a striker and keeps it on the feet. But I don't see him having any problem, doing what he did to Barboza, who's a much higher level striker technically than Diaz. So Johnson for a decision, definitely. All right, the co-main event at heavyweight, Junior Dos Santos versus Alers Overeem. This is a really sad fight to me. This definitely does not have the same intrigue that it would have had when Overeem first came over after he dispatched Brock Lesnar. I think Overeem's still good for fun fights, but I don't really want to see either of these guys in a high stakes fight in the division anymore. Junior Dos Santos, what's happened to this guy has just been really depressing after losing to Kane twice, and then his last fight against Stipe Miocic. While he still won the fight, and you could see he still had the boxing advantage, Miocic basically put the same game plan on him that Kane did, and was able to beat him up a lot in that fight. And Dos Santos, he was hesitant with his hands. He just looked shell-shocked. Didn't have the same confidence in his combinations. Didn't throw with the same authority. Seems like he's lost a ton of hand and foot speed. I still think he has the power, though, to knock out Overeem, who is just way more hesitant on the feet. This guy doesn't throw anything anymore. The fight against Roy Nelson, it was a solid win, but it was so weird because all of the strikes he landed in that fight were all body kicks and knees to the chin. It was crazy. This guy just does not want to throw a punch, and it's because he has a glass chin. The Rothwell fight was doing well, was working some front kicks, some good striking tools from distance, but got blasted and suffered the Bigfoot knockout, the Travis Brown knockout. Even against Frank Mir, just wanted to wrestle with him the whole time, and even his fight against Stefan Struve, I think he threw like one punch on the feet. They were just feeling each other out for a couple minutes. He threw like one punch and then shot in for the takedown, and showed that he has scary ground and pound. So that was a good sign. But on the feet, he's just completely uncomfortable. Roy Nelson still was dropping this guy at the end, and every time he came forward, Overeem would just throw his guard up and cover up, and he just does not want to trade. So Dos Santos still has enough power. I think he's still a much higher level striker than Overeem, so I think he can still get the knockout, even though he's just a shell of himself at this point. But I would say if Overeem was ever going to beat Dos Santos, now is definitely the time, given that Dos Santos is really severely diminished now. I don't like his chances to get it to the ground, but if he can push him up against the fence, beat him up from the clinch, I think that would be his path to victory, but I see that as very unlikely. I think he does, though, stand a better chance of beating him now than if he had fought Dos Santos when he first came into the UFC, but I just think it's a sad fight. Both of these guys, Overeem's gotten better technically, but that chin is gone, and he just doesn't want to throw his hands. And Junior Dos Santos is just getting worse. So, sad fight, but I got Junior Dos Santos by knockout. All right, now the main event at lightweight for the title, Rafael Dos Anjos versus Donald Cerrone. I know everyone loves Cowboy. I think people just don't give the respect to Dos Anjos that he deserves because they don't like his fighting style, because they think he's boring. But this guy's incredible. What he did to Pettis was nothing short of amazing. The guy's become one of the best takedown artists in the UFC. Not that he has a wide array of takedowns, or he's a great chain wrestler or anything, but in terms of effectiveness, just getting the takedown, getting the fight to the ground, he's spectacular at it. He's a way better athlete now than he ever was. And uses his hands so well to close the not just to close the distance, but he was beating up Pettis on the feet the entire fight. And round 5 looked the same as round 1. Sticks to his game plan, throws big, hard combinations, has great hand speed, backs you up against the fence, and then takes you down. Did that to Nate Diaz. And, this guy's just been improving at an astronomical rate for his last couple of fights, ever since his loss to Nurmagomedov. Finished Ben Henderson, knocked him out, had a super dominant performance against Nate Diaz, and then, had an even more dominant performance than he had against Nate Diaz, against a guy who's way better than Nate Diaz, a way more highly skilled fighter in Pettis. So he's got the takedown ability. He's got the striking. He already has a win over Cerrone. The first fight, I thought that he caught Cerrone at a bad time. That's when Cerrone was kind of a head case. Had a really sloppy performance against Nunes just before that first Dos Anjos fight. And then Cerrone picked it back up again, went on his big win streak, became a knockout artist. So Cerrone's improved a lot, but I think you're kind of starting to see him not decline, but just all of the fights, all the time in the cage, fighting so frequently. I think that's starting to take a toll on him. Against Ben Henderson, took that fight on short notice, but just did not look like he had the gas to really make much happen in that fight. Even against Miles Jury, the fight before Ben Henderson, not that he looked bad, but never came close to really getting a finish. Finished McDessie, is really improved his ability to knock people out with those head kicks. Sneaks those in out of nowhere, and he still has great head kicks. I think he's improved a lot with his knockout power and his timing. Catching Adriano Martins and Jim Miller perfectly with those head kicks. But Dos Anjos, I would say, has improved way more than Cerrone has, and has fought the way higher level competition. He stopped Ben Henderson in the first round, and then what he did to Pettis, who just ran through Cerrone years ago. And it's been a long time since Cerrone has had to fight a guy who's had to it's been a really long time since Cerrone's had to consistently fight off takedowns, and he just hasn't faced that really at all in the UFC. Everyone has been content to strike with him, and Dos Anjos is really going to test that. I think he's just going to be able to put Cerrone on his back, really. And the first fight, Dos Anjos was able to win with the pressure boxing, come forward, throw Cerrone off of his game. Cerrone really needs that space to make use of those head kicks. And I think, given how much Dos Anjos has improved here, I think he's going to do the exact same thing, but just to a higher degree. I think it's going to be takedown city for Rafael Dos Anjos. And another thing to consider, Donald Cerrone, I believe in the UFC at least, has never gone into the championship rounds, rounds 4 and 5. So if this drags out, which I think it might, I'd expect him to wear down in those later rounds, especially if Dos Anjos is just taking him down and pounding on him. So I think we could expect to see a late finish, either submission or by ground and pound, 4th or 5th round. But I'm going to take Dos Anjos by decision. I wouldn't count out Cerrone's chances of catching him if he's able to create space, have time to work on the feet. But just given what Dos Anjos was able to do against Pettis, I think he'll definitely be able to do that against Cerrone. So going with Dos Santos for the decision. All right, guys, those are my predictions for UFC on Fox 17. Dos Santos versus Cerrone 2. I forgot to say at the top, but follow me on Twitter. My link is in the description. And I will be back within the next couple of days with my predictions for UFC 195, Lawler versus Condit. Take care, you guys. Thank you for watching. For those of you who've been supportive, thank you so much. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.